Howdy y'all, I am Ice Gold, and the year is almost over. We are on December 30th, 2023, day number 364, and I wanted to go over my my wish list for the game in 2024. There are some things that I'm not really going to touch on as much because, just saying like make PvP better, that's kind of just that's kind of general and vague and honestly kind of a given. But I'll talk about some of the other stuff that I have on my wish list for 2024. I've got a good few big things in here, so let's just go ahead and start. So the Nightmare Dungeon has been talked about over the last month and really just since Wallaroo released in general. And it's been hyped up as this end of Wallaroo type thing. Hopefully this dungeon is good. The conclusion to the main Wallaroo story did not feel like a good end to the fourth arc by any means. Like, it was so vague and it fell flat and all that. So I'm hoping whatever happens here really puts that to rest and gives us a solid ending to the world and the arc as a whole. The reason why it's even coming out next year is because the devs have been working on new fight mechanics, so it wasn't ready for the November 27th release when Wallaroo officially dropped. So the fact that the new mechanics were the cause for the delay has me really hoping they bring out the big guns for this dungeon. I have heard that it will be coming out on January 24th, but I did not hear that from a KI employee, so take that with a grain of salt. From the looks of things, they want to make it like a Tartarus type thing, which will be interesting if there's a bunch of bosses in the same instance like there were in Tartarus, like with the Death Satyr, Death Minotaur, even like optional bosses and puzzles and all that, and I think that's what they're going for here. The devs have also mentioned that they wanted to make it like a mini raid, quote unquote, and obviously it'd still only take up to 4 people, but when they say this it makes me think like there may be something like a drummer roll, like in the Voracious Void raid, or maybe there's puzzles that you have to coordinate with your team, like the Kameka South token revealing puzzle in the south area of the Crying Sky raid. Or, maybe it's even something totally new. But as much as I like difficulty making a dungeon more interesting, I hope it's still reasonably easy to complete with your average team up queue. Like, it could lock casual players out of the content entirely, and historically, KI has done a good job of making these dungeons hard and still doable for more casual players, but I'm still kind of worried after the whole Azteca raid thing and how buggy it was in the beginning and how hard it still is. Like, even after the nerfs, one slip up sometimes costing entire runs regardless of what strat you use. Another thing for me with the Nightmare is definitely easier access to Dreamwater since it's such a lucrative reagent right now. And best case scenario, the Nightmare drops more of this, like more of this than Freddy Croaker does, because getting 2 Dreamwater per Freddy run is tiring, and it's been giving me Dragoon PTSD. Yeah, you kinda don't want the whole alchemical extract debacle all over again, because that took forever, and even though it's like making gear pieces takes somewhere between 30 and 40 and 50, I think, in some cases, and the jewels only costing like 10 to 12. The rate at which they drop is still not great. So best case scenario, 1 run of the Nightmare can at least guarantee like a health jewel, for example. I don't have any on me because I only have 8 Dreamwater, so how about that? Another thing is, I am hoping that there's actually not a new raid coming in 2024, and I wasn't sure if I wanted there to be a raid next year, but I think that the more time they have to design a raid that's both accessible and doable, the better, especially after the Azteca thing, like I mentioned before. Regardless of whether or not I decide to put one out this year, I think that there should only be level 170 raid, because they are not putting out a new world. They're taking the usual off year after they finish an arc, so if there was a raid this year and a raid in 2025, then there would be 2 level 170 raids and there would be 2 totally different gear templates. And I think what they want to do with the next raid is they want to bring back the Void and Nullity templates, which I think could be interesting. Having a 170 and 180 version of the Nullity robes, but you would just have to do another raid for it. and I like it. You know, like Nullity is still best in slot even after Wallaroo came out, and it will continue to be best in slot after the Nightmare comes out. So, oh boy, I am hoping that we get a new best robe soon, because much as I love these null robes, the template is not getting updated to 170. So Nullity is going to continue to be best in slot, so bringing back the template would entice a lot of players, and it would get them doing the new raid. We're in this between arcs position again, where, you know, KingsIsle will usually add a big dungeon for the fall update, so having a raid out for 3 or 4 months before the gear gets replaced ain't the wave, and I think KingsIsle should wait to add the next raid. So also on my list, I have a big fall dungeon. And as I mentioned before, there's usually a big dungeon released in the fall update after an arc concludes, and after Arc 2 there were the 4 dungeons, with Darkmoor being the one meant for max level players. After Arc 3 we had the Catacombs, which gave us the new best in slot gear for many pieces, and now we are about to conclude Arc 4 with the Nightmare, and I think it might honestly be time to crank up stats even more than they already have been. I've talked about this before in prior videos, with how hard Wallaroo has become for casual players who, you know, didn't farm Catacombs, didn't farm Merciless or Eon when they were best in slot. It's going to be tough for those players to get through on just Darkmoor gear. So I think that because of that, there needs to be a new staple set of dungeon gear, and if they have something planned for next fall, no matter how whack it might look, I think that it's time that we make sure there's a dungeon that everyone has to stop at to stay competitive. It might sound a little counterintuitive, but the idea that Darkmoor is something that every wizard has to farm, is that an outline on this thing? Is something that, you know, it gives people an extra kick in the pants. You know, it's like, if you want to proceed, you will go and farm Darkmoor at level 100 to make the third arc easier and give you some better stats. And honestly, the Catacombs fell flat with this. The robes, wands, and the thames, even on release, you know, they were all outclassed by other gear. Like, I probably still have my Tennyson robe sitting around somewhere in my bank for all my characters. And then also, I mean, the wands were honestly just like your typical Arc 3 wands, but it's like pack wands were just better. So yeah, I'm glad we're past that, even though pack gear is still the best in a lot of cases. And then the Athames, you know, not giving pip chance was what really held them back, so people just kept using Darkmoor, and it was a whole thing. But everything else was still best in slot for a while. Even the amulets, I'm still using my Dragoon amulet because I don't have my Reaver amulet yet. So, you know, these, it's like the other Dragoon pieces, they were good for the time. And, you know, we all thought, like, you know, Dragoon, it's probably going to be the best for another while, because, you know, Waterworks was best in slot all the way through Chrysalis, and then Darkmoor was best in slot through Imperia, and then Catacombs, you know, we thought was going to be best in slot all the way through to the end of Arc 4, and it just wasn't, because in early 2022, the Merciless gear got buffed like a crazy amount. I don't know if I still have any left, but this is basically the template that we got when that happened. And, you know, that followed by the Voracious Void raid coming out like 6 months later pretty much rendered the rest of the Dragoon pieces useless. I mean, minus the amulet, but now Wallaroo's out and Reaver amulets and the new jewel templates, it's like, now they're useless. The fourth arc is definitely tough if you're running it with just Darkmoor, but we're kind of at the point where a new dungeon needs to offer gear that's good enough to make people stop there and keep farming until they get all of what they need, and have it still be really great even 5 years from now. And this is the time for KI to do it. And it's my hope that the yearly raids are not going to take these dungeons' place from here on out. Another thing that I want to see in 2024 are Arc 2 spellements, and the devs have gone out and said that they want to add these by the spring update, so we'll see if they can make good on that. But even though You know, it's not technically an Arc 2 spell. I really just want Frost Giant to not be trash anymore, and if it means that I have to sit there spamming Lord Ombra for days on end, then so be it. I'm desperate. Otherwise, there are a lot of Arc 2 spells that could be much better, and who knows, maybe we could see some getting good use in PvP after they come out. So also on my list, I have an Arc 1 Spellment Audit, and if you've seen my video from a couple of days ago, you'll know that there are a lot of overpowered Arc 1 Path B spells, and I think that some of these need to be looked at. You know, like I talked about, I mean, Centaur is honestly life's biggest defender, but I'm more talking about stuff like, you know, Vampire and Hydra and all that. So, you know, like I know that these Arc 1 spells, they've already been changed at least once before, but many of them are either too strong or completely useless, and I think that an audit to tone down things like Vampire and Hydra, as aforementioned, would be very nice and would lower the barrier to entry in PvP by a considerable margin. And then the final thing that I wrote, there's probably some stuff that other people want to see that I'm just missing here, but the last thing that I wrote down here was a graphics overhaul continuation. In 2019, they totally revamped Wizard City. Like, I know that if I let me find classic mode. Here we go. So once that happens, once it switches, you'll see just how different it looks. So let's check it out. Yeah, look at all that. The memories, they're rushing back. But you kind of get the idea. Like last week, I played through the Avalon box for a video about farming energy gear, and some of the Dragonspire rooms, they really got me wondering why they just stopped with the graphics overhaul after Wizard City. And I feel like if I was a new player entranced by the graphics in Wizard City, I'd just get whiplash from walking out into the Oasis in Croc and seeing all this low poly sand that really makes the game look like it was made in 2008, you know? So it's like, the game is certainly aging in that aspect, and I think that KingsIsle just needs to get ahead of it. The last time, like when they did this, revamped the Wizard City graphics, that was 2019, the year the Catacombs came out, right after Arc 3 was done. So, you know, in a year like 2024, where they're not putting out a new world, they can focus more on stuff like this. And like a Croc revamp would be nice to at least start with. And, you know, I am honestly of the opinion that this game could go back to how popular it used to be if the devs just make the right choices with making sure the game is up to snuff for, you know, 2024. Like, the game is turning 16 this year, and, you know, if KingsIsle wants the game to, like, reach its former glory again, and I honestly think it can, they need to start upgrading the graphics in the lower worlds and all that. You know, like, right choices, like I was talking about earlier. In this case, they involve updating the graphics for every world up to Celestia, which does include Grizzleheim and Wintertusk. So if they could get to that this year, I mean, I don't really expect them to get to every single world this year, but if they could at least start on it and make the game look a little more polished, I think that it could come back to its former glory at some point if they, you know, did some more marketing and all that. Zafaria Onward are fine, honestly, in terms of graphics, but it's really those first 6 worlds that really had this problem. Well, thank y'all for watching. There are some things that I didn't really touch on or write much about in my Google Doc, like Pyre getting a level update, which I know that Hawkules, their community manager, has said will be happening, but also mentioned there won't be a new world. So, I mean, hey, you know, I'll take it. I can finally get Bladestorm 2 on my fan, and she'll be popping off. But yeah, there's just a lot of basic quality of life changes that I hope get made, and there's really just a lot to list, like, but you get the idea. I'm sure a lot of you have your own wish lists for 2024, and best case scenario, what I said in this video gets done, and the game experiences like a revitalization. Like, I think KingsIsle is absolutely capable of making that happen. So that's just my take on things. So thank y'all for watching. I have been Ice Gold. Be sure to like, subscribe, and leave like 50 comments for the algorithm. My Discord is linked down in the description if you want to chat with me some more, and I will see y'all later.